Silent watchers. The Tarjan scout vessel Eternal Observer drifted silently at the edge of Sol's heliosphere, its quantum diffusion hull rendering it virtually undetectable to what High Commander Vextal believed were primitive scanning technologies. The commander's four eyes blinked in sequence as he studied the holographic display of the third planet, Earth. Record another observation log, Vextal instructed the ship's eye. Day 67 of observation. The primates continue their quaint attempts at space exploration. Their orbital satellites remain limited to their immediate planetary vicinity. No evidence of faster-than-light understanding. Assessment. Technological Level 3, Pre-Unification Society. Recommendation. Maintain standard observation protocols for at least another solar revolution. The commander's second-in-command, Science Officer Lerma, approached with her datapad. Commander, I've completed another analysis of their communication networks. They're still using electromagnetic radiation for data transmission. Quite charming, really. Vextal's mouthparts twitched in what passed for a smile among the Tarjans. The hegemony will be pleased. Another primitive species to eventually bring into the fold. Their planet has abundant resources. What's most amusing, continued Lerma, is how they continuously point their primitive detection devices outward, searching for life among the stars. They've been doing it for nearly a century, yet they haven't noticed us hovering right here. The arrogance of the technologically superior is a trait shared across the galaxy, Science Officer. The voice, speaking perfect Tarjan, came not from anyone aboard the ship, but from the communications array. Vextal froze, his exoskeleton stiffening with shock. What was that? He demanded. Check our systems for malfunctions. No malfunctions detected, replied the ship's eye. Transmission origin, Earth. Impossible, hissed Vextal. They can't possibly have detected us, much less learned our language. Actually, the voice continued, sounding almost amused, we detected your first scout ship 13 years ago. The one that thought it was being stealthy when it collected atmospheric samples. Did you really think we wouldn't notice a sudden localized shift in air pressure 20 kilometers above our Pacific Ocean? The bridge fell silent as the Tarjans struggled to process this information. This is Commander Vextal of the Tarjan Hegemony Scout Vessel Eternal Observer. Identify yourself. Captain Eleanor Chen, Earth Defense Force. Though honestly, the title is a bit formal for my taste. You can call me Ellie. Vextal exchanged glances with Lerma. How are you communicating with us? Your species doesn't possess the technology for quantum encrypted transmissions. A soft chuckle came through the speakers. See, that's the problem with your approach. You look at our public infrastructure, our civilian technology, and you make assumptions. Bad practice, Commander. Science Officer, scan for the source of this transmission, ordered Vextal. Lerma worked furiously at her console. Commander, I can't locate it. Wait, I'm detecting something approaching from the planet. The main display shifted to show a small object accelerating toward them from Earth. It looked primitive. Little more than a metallic cylinder with basic propulsion systems. Is that a probe? Vextal couldn't keep the disbelief from his voice. Oh, that's just our way of saying hello, replied Captain Chen. The primitive probe suddenly accelerated to impossible speeds, covering the remaining distance in seconds. Before Vextal could order evasive maneuvers, it took up position 50 meters from their hull. Scan it, he commanded. Sir, I'm not detecting any power signature. It appears to be. Lerma's report was cut short as the probe transformed, unfolding into a complex array of instruments that immediately bathed the Eternal Observer in a web of energy the Tarjans had never encountered before. Ship systems began shutting down one by one. Gravity fluctuated. Emergency lights flickered. What is happening? Demanded Vextal as his crew scrambled to regain control. A demonstration, came Captain Chen's calm voice, still somehow transmitting clearly despite their communications array being offline. You see, Commander, Earth has a rather unique approach to interstellar relations. The main display flickered back to life, but it wasn't showing the probe anymore. Instead, it revealed what had been hiding beyond the Eternal Observer's detection range. A massive Earth vessel, its design unlike anything in the Hegemony's database. It wasn't sleek or symmetrical like Tarjan ships. It looked almost cobbled together, with sections that seemed to serve no aerodynamic or aesthetic purpose. What is that?" whispered Lerma. "That science officer is the EDF Deception. Fitting name, isn't it?" Captain Chen sounded almost conversational. "One of our older vessels. Actually, we brought it out of mothballs specifically for this first contact scenario." First contact. Vex Tall found his voice. "The Hegemony has protocols for first contact. This is merely an observation mission." "Yes, we know all about your protocols. We've had access to your databases for years. Very thorough, very systematic. Unfortunately, they're based on a flawed premise, that you're always the technologically superior party." The display shifted again, showing not just the deception but dozens, then hundreds of vessels decloaking throughout the solar system. Some were massive, dwarfing even the largest Hegemony warships. Others were small and agile. All of them were clearly armed. This is impossible." Vextal's mandibles clicked rapidly in distress. "Your species hasn't even achieved planetary unification. You're still using combustion engines for ground transportation." "Actually," Captain Chen replied, "we achieved faster-than-light travel 63 years ago. We just didn't see any reason to tell anyone." "Why?" was all Vextal could manage. "Why the deception?" "Simple, Commander. Humanity has a long history of being underestimated. We've learned to use that to our advantage. While civilizations like yours focus on standardized development paths, we took a different approach. We keep our advanced technology hidden, while maintaining a facade of primitive development." The probe that had disabled their systems suddenly reactivated their main computer, displaying a star chart. It showed Earth, but also highlighted 17 other star systems. "These are the civilizations we've already made peaceful contact with," explained Chen. "Species who approached us with diplomacy rather than condescension. We have thriving trade relationships with all of them." "Then why reveal yourselves to us now?" asked Vextal. "Because your Hegemony has been getting a bit too aggressive with its observation missions lately. Your ships have been scanning our population centers, testing our defenses. We don't appreciate that." Vextal's mind raced. The implications were staggering. If humans had achieved this level of technology while maintaining the appearance of a pre-FTL civilization, what else were they capable of? "What do you want from us?" he finally asked. "Want? Nothing. This is simply a notification. Earth and its allies are to be classified as a protected zone. No further observation missions. No resource surveys. No meddling in our affairs. And if the Hegemony refuses..." For the first time, Captain Chen's voice lost its friendly tone. "Then you'll learn why Earth's military doctrine includes the phrase, 'no witnesses, no mercy.' That probe attached to your ship, it could have vaporized you before you even knew it was there. Instead, it's going to safely escort you back to Tarjan space." The probe reattached itself to the Eternal Observer's hull, and the ship's systems came back online. Their navigation computer had been reprogrammed with a direct course back to Hegemony territory. "One last thing, Commander," added Chen, as the Eternal Observer began to move, propelled by the probe's energy field. "When you report back to your superiors, make sure they understand something. We've been watching you watching us. And unlike you, we've been paying attention." As the Tarjan vessel accelerated away from Sol, Vextal stared at the final image on his display. Earth's enormous fleet, arrayed in formation, a silent statement of power that needed no translation. The Hegemony had severely miscalculated, and Vextal had a feeling they were about to learn just how costly such miscalculations could be. The demonstration. The Tarjan High Council chamber buzzed with agitation. 27 senior officials, representing the various facets of the hegemony, chittered and clicked in a cacophony of disbelief and outrage as Commander Vextal's report concluded. Supreme Overlord Kravash, the eldest and most decorated Tarjan military mind in 3 generations, slammed his ceremonial staff against the floor, sending vibrations through the chamber that immediately silenced the council. "This is preposterous," Kravash declared, his voice carrying the gravelly authority of one who had overseen the subjugation of 6 species, a pre-unification society with faster-than-light technology, hidden fleets, alliances with 17 undocumented spacefaring species. "Commander Vextal, are you certain your ship wasn't subjected to some form of hallucinogenic attack?" Vextal's posture remained rigid, despite the implicit insult. "Supreme Overlord, I have submitted all sensor data for analysis. The Science Division confirms that the readings are consistent with technologies far beyond what we believe the humans possessed." Science Minister Jorek raised a slender appendage. "The data appears authentic, though how this is possible remains concerning. The humans have hidden an entire technological revolution from our observation teams for decades." "Nonsense," interjected Fleet Admiral Pexmore. "The explanation is simple. Commander Vextal encountered not humans, but some other species using Earth as a forward base. Perhaps the Axolotl Confederation or the Vrex Dominion. They're employing psychological warfare to protect a strategic resource." Kravash considered this a reasonable theory. Earth does possess substantial quantities of heavy metals and water. "With respect," Vextal said, his voice steady despite interrupting his superior, "the beings who contacted us were unmistakably human. Their biological signatures matched our extensive catalog, and the technology they demonstrated. It was unlike anything in our database. Not Axolotl, not Vrex, something entirely new." A tense silence fell over the chamber. Regardless of the truth, Kravash finally declared, "We cannot allow this challenge to go unanswered. The hegemony has never retreated from primitives, regardless of what technological trinkets they may have acquired." Fleet Admiral Pexmore's mouthparts formed a tight line. "I recommend a measured show of force. The 5th Battle Group is currently on maneuvers near the Cygnus Arm. 12 warships, including the dreadnought Inevitable Conquest, more than sufficient to pacify a single system, regardless of what defenses they may possess." Kravash nodded. "Make it so. If these humans have indeed achieved the technological level they claim, they will make a valuable addition to the hegemony. If they resist, well, there are always other planets with heavy metals and water." Captain Eleanor Chen was enjoying a rare moment of peace in her quarters aboard the Deception when the alert came through. She sighed, setting down her mug of tea, imported from New Taipei, Earth's first extraplanetary colony, and accessed the holographic display floating above her desk. "Talk to me, Era." She addressed the ship's eye. "Tarjan vessels detected entering the outer system." "Captain," replied the artificial intelligence, its voice modulated to sound warm and human despite its vast computational capabilities. 12 ships, including 1 dreadnought-class vessel. They're not being subtle." Chen smiled slightly. "They never are." Tactical analysis. Conventional hegemony battle formation. They're broadcasting standard Tarjan military frequencies, including an automated demand for surrender in 87 languages. Interestingly, most of these are Earth languages they shouldn't know exist yet. "They've been studying us longer than we thought," Chen mused. "Or they grabbed a linguistics database from somewhere else." Status of our assets. All systems nominal. The Phantom Fleet is in position. Solar defense grid is charged and ready. Project Looking Glass is standing by. Chen took another sip of her tea. "And our allies. The archivists have acknowledged the situation but indicate this is our dance. The Nyx Collective has 3 observer ships cloaked at the heliopause. The others are maintaining their agreed-upon non-intervention stance." "Fair enough. This was always going to happen sooner or later." Chen set down her mug and straightened her uniform. Inform Admiral Okonkwo that I'll be on the bridge in 5 minutes, and ARI. Initiate protocol smoke and mirrors. With pleasure, Captain. Fleet Admiral Pexmore watched with satisfaction as his battle group dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Sol system. The inevitable conquest, 2 kilometers of Tarjan military might, led the formation, its weapon systems already running targeting algorithms on the primitive satellites orbiting the third planet. Status report, Pexmore commanded. All ships reporting optimal functionality. Admiral, his executive officer responded. No resistance detected. Human communication satellites continuing normal operations. No indication they've even noticed our arrival. The Admiral's mouthparts twitched in amusement. Perhaps Commander Vextal was indeed hallucinating. Proceed with standard intimidation protocol. Target their largest military installations for the initial demonstration. Nothing too destructive. We want submission, not annihilation. Sir, interrupted the sensor officer, I'm detecting anomalous readings throughout the system. Pexmore gestured impatiently. Specify. It's difficult to describe. Sir, gravitational fluctuations, radiation patterns that don't match known phenomena. And the human communications network just changed. Changed how? It's encrypted now, sir, using quantum algorithms we can't break. The fleet communications officer turned from her station. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission. Origin point. Everywhere. Everywhere. Pexmore's exoskeleton stiffened. Clarify. The signal appears to be coming from multiple sources simultaneously, sir. All using the same frequency, all perfectly synchronized. On screen, ordered Pexmore. The main display activated, showing a human female in a dark uniform with minimal insignia. Behind her was what appeared to be a command center, though the design was unlike any the Tarjans had seen in their studies of Earth's military structures. Fleet Admiral Pexmore, the human greeted him by name. I'm Admiral Amara Okonkwo, Earth Defense Force. I see you've ignored our warning. Pexmore recovered quickly from his surprise. The Tarjan hegemony does not yield to threats from pre-unification societies. Your deception has been noted but changes nothing. Earth will join the hegemony, either through peaceful submission or forceful integration. Admiral Okonkwo's expression didn't change. You seem to be operating under several misconceptions. Admiral. First, Earth is unified. We simply maintain the appearance of division because we find it culturally enriching. Second, we have no interest in joining your hegemony. And third, she paused, her eyes hardening. You've mistaken our courtesy for weakness. Pexmore chittered dismissively. Brave words from a species that only discovered nuclear fission 80 years ago. Actually, Okonkwo replied, we've moved well beyond nuclear fission. Allow me to demonstrate. Before Pexmore could respond, his tactical officer called out in alarm. Admiral. Energy surge detected throughout the system. The main display split to show what appeared to be hundreds of small objects materializing around each Tarjan vessel. They looked almost like Earth satellites, primitive, angular constructions of metal and solar panels. What are those? Demanded Pexmore. Unknown, sir. They weren't there a moment ago. No FTL signatures detected. Admiral Okonkwo smiled slightly. We call them ghosts. Quantum-entangled defensive platforms. They don't need to travel here. They're simultaneously everywhere and nowhere until we collapse their probability state at a desired location. Science fiction, spat Pexmore. Target those platforms and destroy them. Targeting systems are not responding, sir. Something is interfering with our weapons. Okonkwo continued as if she hadn't heard the exchange. You see, Admiral, while your civilization was developing standardized, predictable military technology, we took a different approach. We asked ourselves, why limit our thinking to what's supposed to be possible? The inevitable conquest suddenly shuddered, its massive frame vibrating, as if struck by an invisible force. What was that? Pexmore demanded. Unknown, sir. We're not detecting any weapon signatures, but our hull integrity just dropped by 15%. On the display, Okonkwo nodded to someone off-screen. That was a gentle nudge from one of our gravity lance platforms. Essentially, we're folding space-time around your ships. Very precise. Very effective. Another shudder, stronger this time. Warning klaxons began to sound throughout the dreadnought. Hull integrity at 70% and falling, sir. 2 of our escort vessels are reporting critical systems failures. Pexmore's mind raced. Nothing in the hegemony's database suggested humans possess technology even remotely capable of what he was witnessing. It defied everything they knew about technological progression. How? He finally asked, his voice barely audible over the ship's alarms. Admiral Okonkwo's expression softened slightly. We developed differently than you expected. While you were watching our public infrastructure, our civilian technology, we were developing military capabilities in secret. Your observation team saw exactly what we wanted them to see. Another impact. The lights flickered. Hull integrity critical. Sir, we can't withstand another hit. Pexmore stared at the human admiral. You could destroy us right now. Yes, she agreed simply. Then why don't you? Because Earth's doctrine of no witnesses, no mercy is balanced by another principle, measured response. You came here to intimidate us, not annihilate us. We're responding in kind. The Admiral leaned forward slightly. Return to your territory, Admiral Pexmore. Inform your hegemony that Earth and its allies are not interested in your particular brand of unity. We will defend ourselves if provoked, but we'd vastly prefer peaceful coexistence. Pexmore's pride warred with his tactical assessment. The battle was lost before it had even begun. And if I refuse, then you'll never make it back to Tarjan space to deliver our message, and we'll be forced to send a more direct representative. After a moment of tense silence, Pexmore gave the order. Disengage. Set course for hegemony space. As the damaged Tarjan vessels limped away, Admiral Okonkwo's image remained on screen. One more thing, Admiral. The demonstration you witnessed today, that was using technology we considered obsolete 20 years ago. The transmission cut off, leaving Pexmore staring at the stars, wondering how the hegemony had so catastrophically misjudged humanity's capabilities, and what other surprises the galaxy might hold. Galactic consequences. The Great Hall of Deliberation on Tarsus Prime had never been so quiet. 3 standard months had passed since the 5th Battle Group's humiliating retreat from Sol, and the impact was still reverberating throughout the hegemony. Supreme Overlord Kurvash stood motionless at the center of the hall, surrounded by the highest authorities in Tarjan society, as the final intelligence report concluded. Verified beyond any reasonable doubt, intoned Chief Intelligence Analyst Mevrin, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. Humans have established diplomatic and trade relations with 17 spacefaring civilizations, including species we believe to be extinct or mythical. They possess technology that contradicts our understanding of developmental progression. And most concerning, they have been aware of the wider galactic community for at least 70 years, possibly longer. Kurvash's exoskeleton creaked slightly as he shifted position, the only sound in the otherwise silent hall. How? He finally asked. How did we miss this? Mevrin's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of professional discomfort. We were deceived because we wanted to be deceived. Supreme Overlord. Our observation protocols assume technological development follows a linear, predictable path. Humans took a different approach. Explain, commanded Kurvash. Based on our analysis, humans compartmentalized their technological development. Their civilian infrastructure advanced along expected lines. Combustion engines, rudimentary space exploration, primitive communication networks. But their military technology. Mevrin paused. Their military technology was developed in complete secrecy, following unconventional paths that our analysts never considered possible. Fleet Admiral Pexmore, His once proud posture, now perpetually hunched from the weight of his failure, spoke up. The human admiral called it hiding in plain sight. They deliberately maintained the appearance of a pre-unification society, while developing capabilities that rival or exceed our own. Cravache turned to Science Minister Jorek. Is this assessment accurate? The Science Minister's appendages twitched nervously. The data is conclusive, Supreme Overlord. Furthermore, our ongoing analysis of their entertainment broadcasts, what they call science fiction, suggests something even more disturbing. Go on. They've been publicly theorizing about the technologies they would later develop for centuries, not as scientific papers, but as stories. Entertainment. What we dismissed as fantasy was actually a roadmap. A murmur ran through the assembled officials. So while we watched them building primitive rockets, Cravache said slowly, they were already developing quantum entanglement platforms and gravity manipulation technology. Yes, Supreme Overlord, confirmed Jorek. And based on our analysis of their broadcasts over the last 50 years, they may already possess technology we haven't even theorized yet. Cravache turned to face the massive holographic display dominating one wall of the hall. It showed the known galaxy, with Tarjan territory highlighted in blue, covering nearly a quarter of the charted systems. Earth was a tiny pinpoint of light, seemingly insignificant amid the vastness of the hegemony. Yet that tiny light had fundamentally altered the balance of power in ways they were only beginning to understand. What are our options? Cravache finally asked. Strategic Minister Vorkel stepped forward. We have identified 3 potential courses of action. Supreme Overlord. First, we could marshal our full military might and attempt to subjugate Earth through overwhelming force. The probability of success, Cravache asked. Less than 20%, and declining as we learn more about their capabilities. Cravache's mouthparts twitched with displeasure. Continue. Second, we could isolate them. Establish a quarantine zone around Sol and its known allies, cutting them off from further expansion. And the third option, Vorkal hesitated. Diplomatic engagement. Acknowledge them as equals and pursue a formal non-aggression pact. The hall erupted in chittering protest. Equality was not a concept the hegemony embraced. For 10,000 years, they had expanded through a simple principle. Superior species governed, inferior species served. There were no equals. Cravache raised his staff, silencing the outcry. Is there any indication of human territorial ambitions? Do they seek expansion? Meverin consulted her datapad. Curiously, no. They have established colonies within their home system and several neighboring stars, but they show no pattern of aggressive expansion. Their alliances appear to be based on mutual benefit rather than dominance. Could this be part of their deception? Asked Cravache. Possible, but unlikely. We've analyzed their historical records extensively. Humans have a complex relationship with empire building. Their most stable global periods have been characterized by networks of independent states engaged in trade and cultural exchange rather than centralized authority. Cravache turned to Fleet Admiral Pexmore. You encountered them directly. What is your assessment of their intentions? Pexmore's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. They could have destroyed my entire battle group. Supreme Overlord. They chose not to. Their admiral spoke of measured response and peaceful coexistence. I believe they genuinely prefer diplomacy to conflict, but they are also prepared for the latter. A species of contradictions, mused Cravache. Technological marvels disguised as primitives. Military might paired with diplomatic restraint. A doctrine of no witnesses, no mercy balanced by measured response. He turned back to the holographic display, studying the insignificant-looking star that had appended millennia of hegemony doctrine. We will pursue the third option, he declared finally. Establish diplomatic contact. Learn everything we can about their technology, their alliances, their intentions. The hegemony has endured for 10,000 years by adapting to new realities. Strategic Minister Vorkel bowed deeply. As you command, Supreme Overlord. However, there is one additional complication. Speak. A diplomatic envoy has already arrived from Earth. They're requesting an audience. The hall fell silent once more. How long have they been here? Cravash demanded. They arrived this morning. By conventional means, a small vessel that approached openly through the designated shipping lanes. They transmitted formal diplomatic credentials and have been waiting patiently in orbit. Cravash's exoskeleton stiffened. Even now, the humans were a step ahead of them. Bring them here, he commanded. Now, the human diplomat was not what Cravash had expected. Rather than a military figure like Admiral Okonkwo, Earth had sent a small, elderly female with silver hair and eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. She was accompanied by a single aide, a tall, dark-skinned male who carried an unassuming datapad, and no visible security detail. Supreme Overlord Cravash. She greeted him in flawless Tarjan, bowing with surprising grace for one of her species. I am Ambassador Sophia Chen. Earth extends its greetings to the Tarjan hegemony and expresses hope for productive dialogue. Cravash performed the minimal acknowledgement gesture appropriate for an untested diplomat. You speak our language well, Ambassador. Thank you. I've had many years to practice. Your cultural broadcasts are quite comprehensive. The implication, the humans had been studying Tarjan communication for decades without their knowledge, was not lost on Cravash. You've come at an interesting time, Ambassador Chen. Your people have recently demonstrated capabilities that have caused us to reevaluate our understanding of Earth. Chen smiled slightly. Misunderstandings are perhaps inevitable when one party observes without engaging. Supreme Overlord, we're pleased to have the opportunity to correct these misperceptions through direct dialogue. Your military doctrine, Cravash said bluntly, is no witnesses, no mercy. Yet here you stand, extending diplomatic overtures. The contradiction is puzzling. Ah, Chen nodded. I understand your confusion. That particular phrase refers specifically to how we respond to existential threats. It's balanced by another principle, respectful engagement with respectful parties. We believe the hegemony now falls into the latter category. Because we retreated. Because you chose wisdom over pride, Supreme Overlord. That suggests potential for meaningful dialogue. Cravash studied the human carefully. What does Earth want from the hegemony, Ambassador Chen? Primarily, recognition and respect for our sovereignty and that of our allies. Beyond that, we're interested in cultural and scientific exchange, regulated trade, and peaceful coexistence. Not military alliance. Chen's expression remained pleasant. Earth doesn't require military allies, Supreme Overlord. We have developed differently than the hegemony. Where you sought expansion, we sought innovation. Where you standardized, we diversified. And the 17 species you've already allied with. They approached us with curiosity rather than condescension, Chen replied simply. They saw potential partners, not future subjects. The distinction matters greatly to humans. Cravash considered this. 10,000 years of hegemony expansion was predicated on a fundamental assumption. Technological superiority equals the right to rule. Humans and their allies presented an alternative paradigm that challenged the very foundation of Tarjan society. You've hidden your true capabilities for decades, Cravash observed. Why reveal yourselves now? Ambassador Chen's expression grew more serious. Because the galaxy is changing, Supreme Overlord. There are threats emerging from beyond the charted regions that will require cooperation rather than conquest to address. Your hegemony possesses knowledge and resources that could be valuable than what's coming. What threats? Demanded Cravash. Chen gestured to her aide, who activated his datapad. A holographic display appeared, showing astronomical data and deep space scans from regions the hegemony had never explored. We call them the Void Collective, Chen explained. They exist primarily in interstellar space, avoiding star systems entirely. We detected them 20 years ago and have been monitoring their slow advance toward the galactic core. Cravash studied the data, his tactical mind immediately grasping the implications. And you believe cooperation between our civilizations is necessary to counter this threat? We believe diversity of approach is our greatest strength, Chen replied. The hegemony excels at standardization, resource management, and coordinated action across vast distances. Earth and our allies excel at unconventional thinking, adaptation, and technological innovation. Together, we present a more formidable defense than either alone. For the first time in his long career, Cravash found himself considering a genuine alliance with a non-Tarsian species. The concept was almost heretical, yet the logic was undeniable. Your proposal requires careful consideration, Ambassador, he finally said. The hegemony does not change course quickly. Chen nodded. We understand. We've waited decades to make formal contact. We can certainly wait a bit longer for your decision. As the human delegation prepared to depart, Cravash found himself with one final question. Ambassador Chen, why did your people maintain the appearance of a primitive civilization for so long? What advantage did that deception provide? Chen paused, considering her answer carefully. Supreme Overlord, humanity has a long history of being underestimated. We've learned that there's value in being perceived as less capable than you truly are. It gives you time to observe, to prepare, to perfect your strategies without interference. She smiled slightly. In truth, our doctrine isn't really no witnesses, no mercy. That's just the part we allow potential adversaries to see. The complete phrase is, for threats, no witnesses, no mercy. For friends, unwavering loyalty, unlimited potential. As Ambassador Chen departed, Cravash turned once more to the holographic display of the galaxy. The tiny pinpoint that represented Earth now seemed to shine with a different light. Not a threat to be conquered, but perhaps an ally to be cultivated. The hegemony had endured for 10,000 years by imposing its will upon the galaxy. But perhaps, Cravash reflected, adaptation meant learning new ways to endure, even if those ways came from the most unexpected of sources. In the depths of space, humanity continued its patient observation of the galaxy, revealed yet still mysterious, powerful yet restrained. Their doctrine of no witnesses, no mercy remained a warning to those who might threaten them, while their extended hand of friendship offered a glimpse of what might be possible when diversity was seen as strength rather than weakness. The day aliens discovered why Earth was feared became the day they began to understand why Earth might also be valued.